we're now going to talk about how we can figure out if lines are parallel and what we know if lines are parallel. And we're going to talk specifically about angles. So in this picture, we have two lines right here cut by a transversal, and I've named the angles. If we want to know if those two lines are parallel, there's one thing we know. We have a postulate, okay, which is a rule that says if corresponding angles are congruent, then the lines are parallel. Okay, and notice how I wrote this in abbreviated form. Using these symbols is going to really help you on your notes. So if corresponding angles are congruent, then the lines are parallel. Okay, so if I look here, that means if I know 2 and 6 are congruent, then these lines are parallel. Right? Or 1 and 5, or 4 and 8, 3 and 7. Okay? This is a rule. We just know it's true. We can't prove it, but it has to be true, right? There's no way if 2 and 6 are equal that these lines aren't parallel. Okay, what we could prove is, what about if alternate interior angles are congruent? If alternate interior angles are congruent, then lines are parallel. Okay, so if alternate interior angles are congruent, then lines are parallel. So let's try and write a proof for that. Okay, so we're going to have a statement and a reason. For this proof, our given is going to be that angle 3 is congruent to angle 5. Right? If angle 3 is congruent to angle 5, that's the alternate interior part, right? What we're going to try and prove then, I need to label these lines, let's call them A and B. Prove A is parallel to B. Okay, so what we're given is angle 3 is congruent to angle 5. Given. Okay, that's the part right here we just know is true. So now we have to figure out why that means A is parallel to B. This is, again, a proof, so what we're going to look for here is, what I'm looking for is that you understand what I'm saying, not necessarily that you could do it on your own. But what I can say here is that 5 is congruent to 7 because vertical angles are congruent. Right? And then by substitution, angle 3 is congruent to angle 7. Substitution. And then that means that A is parallel to B because of this postulate, if corresponding angles are congruent. And the way we're going to write that, we're going to say corresponding congruent means parallel lines. Okay? So now we know that all we need to get lines are parallel is alternate interior angles. Okay. Version. So if I draw my, lines again, and we'll put in the same angles just for fun. What other angles do we have? We talked about alternate exterior angles, right? So if alternate exterior angles are congruent, then the lines are parallel. Okay, I'm going to leave that proof for you to do for homework, but if that proof then, the given, pick a pair of alternate exterior angles, maybe angle 1 and angle 8. Again, we'll name our lines A and B. Then we're trying to prove A is parallel to B. Okay, so that's another rule. Okay, and then our final rule along with these is something about same side interior angles. If same side interior angles, okay, these aren't going to be congruent, right? 3 and 6 here aren't congruent, right? But what is true is that if they are supplementary, right, which means they add up to 180, supplementary, then lines are parallel. Okay, and I will walk through this proof for you. So if we have our statement and our reason, so what we want as our given here is that we'll pick a pair, I'll say 3 and 6. If 3 and 6 equal 180, then we can prove A is parallel to B. One thing I want you to notice is that we have taken this conditional statement and turned it into a given and prove, and that's something you learned back in Unit 2, but just a reminder. Okay, so our given here is 3 and 6 equals 180. That's a given. Okay? So now, what can we say? Well, I do know that angle 6 plus angle 8 is equal to 180. Oh, sorry, I wrote that wrong. I'll try again. Angle 6 and angle 8 equals 180. Okay, that's because they're supplementary, definition of supplementary. Okay, so I can say now, with substitution, that 3 plus 6 is equal to 6 plus 8, angle 6 plus 8, substitution. So angle 3 is equal to angle 8, subtraction. Notice that I'm writing both substitution and subtraction out and not abbreviating because that sub thing can get confusing. So if 3 is equal to 8, that means A is parallel to B because corresponding angles. Congruent means lines are parallel. To re-go over the rules, and this should really, really be in your notes, right, is if, and we have 4 things, if 1, corresponding angles are congruent, if corresponding angles are congruent, or if alternate interior angles are congruent, or if alternate exterior angles are congruent, or if same side interior angles are congruent, or not congruent but supplementary. If either one of any of those 4 things, then the lines are parallel. Okay, so this is a really big deal. Push pause, write this down, make sure you know what this is saying. Okay, the second part of this video is going to be about if we know our lines are parallel, okay, so that's going to be our given, then what do we know about angles? Okay, and it's going to be all the same things. Okay, so if lines are parallel, then, right, corresponding angles are congruent. And that's going to be a postulate. That's a rule that we can't prove, but that we know is going to be true. We know alternate interior angles are congruent. We're going to be able to prove that. It's very similar. 3, we know alternate exterior angles are congruent. And number 4, same side interior angles are supplementary. Okay, so these are the 4 rules. So they both the statement and its converse are true. Okay, and in the next video we'll talk about how do we apply that. So make sure you get these rules down in your notes. There's 4 rules, right, but times 2. One, if those things are true, lines are parallel, and the second is if lines are parallel, then these 4 things are true.